It is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. That is Pin Siren with Cry Me a River. That is a band that owes their career, or what was their career, to Skid Row. But in my opinion, Bob, Skid Row owes their career to Armed Forces.
Yeah, dude, Mike Henry was one of the originals, man. I mean, I remember seeing James Hetfield at August Red Moon shows way back in the day before Metallica. It's funny because I knew James before Metallica. He was in a band called Leather Charm and played in a couple other local bands. And I remember he was a big fan of Mike Henry's voice. And the funny thing is, after and you could hear in as early as some of the August Red Moon songs, especially the live songs, there's a lot of Hetfield, and especially in Armed Forces, a lot of people said, "Oh, Mike's trying to sing like James Hetfield," and I'm like, "Well, Hetfield was a fan of Mike Henry before Hetfield was singing, so there you go." But yeah, the song you just played sounded just like Skid Row. I thought it was an unreleased Skid Row song.
Well, Pin Siren hails out of New Jersey as well, and they were signed to the Kivel record label.
Is that John Kimmel?
That would be John Kivel. That is correct.
I know John Kimmel. I mean, he was one of the earliest guys, I'll tell you. And John, if you're listening, we've been in touch over the years. He worked with Merciful Fate way back in the day. Is he Danish or? I'm not thinking of Ken Anthony. Is John Kimmel from England?
No, he's from the U.S. as far as I know.
Okay, well, I know both of those. I know John Kimmel too did work with Merciful Fate back in their early demo age era, and when they did the first EP on Rave On Records with Nuns Have No Fun and Corpse Without a Soul. And I remember being in contact with John Kimmel back as early as 1981, probably 81, because it was, I think that's when the EP came out. So there you go. A little history there.
Excellent.
I'm old school, Neely. I know everybody.
That's right. That's why I enjoy having you on the show.
Well, I still can't get in the goddamn chat room, and other people are saying the same thing. I've tried re-registering in a different name, and what the fuck is with your rinky-dink service there, Neely?
I don't know, but there's 25 people in there enjoying the chat room experience. So
well, good. That's good to know. Maybe they blocked. Maybe Chris Aiken blocked me. He doesn't want me in the chat room.
Maybe not. All right, Bob. Well, you've never been married, have you?
Absolutely not.
Okay, and you have no children that you're aware of.
This is true, and if I did have children, I would be aware of them.
Okay. At least you haven't received the call yet.
This is correct, but I've pretty much been in touch with all the women I've been with, and if I wasn't, I've always protected myself very well there, Neely. So I don't have any kids lurking about. I can pretty much guarantee you that.
All right. Well, anyway, what is one of our favorite states that seems
Florida.
To have Florida?
Hey, dude, am I a CMS listener or what?
You are a CMS listener. So I don't think anybody understands what it is about Florida that makes that such a fucked up state.
I think you should talk to your buddy Norge. Norge, isn't he from Florida?
He lives in Florida, yes.
Well, there you go. Fucked up people for a fucked up state.
Right.
No, I love Norge.
All right. Well, a Florida couple feud over a Google search quickly escalated to violence when the wife reportedly shot her husband in the head.
See, that's why I don't get married, Neely.
Tony Brown, a prominent businessman, was discovered in a pool of blood Monday as his Fernandian beach home after his 57-year-old wife, LaWanda Brown, allegedly wounded him.
Now, let me get something straight here. Was it a Fernandian beach home or was it a Nalbandian beach home?
Well, could have been Nalbandian, but being that you're not a married guy or never have been a married guy, I don't really foresee this kind of activity happening in the Nalbandian beach home.
This is correct, Neely.
So we're going to leave it as Fernandian.
Okay.
But
okay.
The 58-year-old husband who owns a consulting agency with his wife was nominated in 2001 by President George W. Bush for a position in the U.S. Treasury Department. He has also served as a former Riviera Beach Community Redeveloping Agency director. The couple's source of conflict Monday stemmed from a project where they were working on their business, according to the Nassau County Sheriff's Office. LaWanda Brown claimed that her husband asked her to search Google for a project template, but she became upset when his tone of voice. She told investigators that the last thing she remembered was her husband walking out of the room, and then her memory became a blur. Deputies arrived at the home around 1 p.m. to find the man was shot in the back of the head. He was airlifted to the hospital in critical condition. The wife was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. She remains in custody Wednesday at the Nassau County Jail, where she is being held on a $500,000 bail.
I'm loving this so far.
All right. Well, that's it, Bob. Any thoughts?
Well, as we spoke earlier, I was talking about my buddy who, in order to protect his family, should own a gun. That's not to say that everyone should own a gun.
Right.
And I think I'm not this big pro guns. I actually think, and I think Chris actually mentioned this too, that the gun laws should be stronger for people that have offenses, like the kid that shot up all these people at the school who had mental issues that were recorded, that people were aware of, that had a history, that had a record, a police record. And I'm sure this chick who shot them had a record as well. And I don't know if the gun was registered in his or her name, but people like that should not be gun owners if they're going to be using the gun in that manner. But go ahead.
Right. Well, I don't know if you had seen in the chat room or on the Facebook that I had recently purchased another handgun.
I remember you were talking about that.
Yeah,
yes.
Like nice little 9mm.
Well, I'm not worried about Neely coming out and shooting me or anybody else. As crazy and as psycho as people might make you out to, I have no fear about people like Neely. I've got no fear about any of the NRA people coming out. I don't have fear about Ted Nugent coming out and shooting me unless I go try to break into his house or something. I got no fear with any of the responsible citizens that have a gun. I've got no fear. What I have fear about is the fucking idiots that have guns, and most of them got their guns illegally, or they got their guns from places where they shouldn't have been able to buy their guns because they had police records or they had a history of mental illness, but it wasn't recorded because, again, this PC society, you can't say he's mentally ill. He's just you can't put that on record or whatever, and then you find out that these guys shoot people up, and I'm sure that's the case with this chick.
Right. Are you a gun owner, Bob?
I am not.
You are not a gun owner.
I'm not a big gun fan, Neely. And, again, if I had a reason to own a gun, like I know Toby, he's got several guns. He's a big gun guy. He's got a family. He's got kids. There's a lot of break-ins in his neighborhood. I'm, again, single. I do my thing. I'm not a big, I've shot guns before. I know a lot. I got a lot of friends that are gun owners. I got friends that are hunters. I got, I'm not opposed to guns, but do I need a gun? No. I'm not a gun guy, but I'm not opposed to people. Like I said, if you're a responsible person that wants to have a gun for protection, it's nobody's right to tell you that you don't have that right to own a gun.
Well, you mentioned Ted Nugent, Bob. Have you had any personal interaction with Ted Nugent in your career?
Met him a couple times, and all were good meetings. I hadn't interviewed him. I met him back in Anaheim when he did his comeback. I guess this was probably late 80s. I think he did his first comeback with Derek St. Holmes. And I met him on, I think, like 2 occasions.
And they both been good?
Well, he didn't shoot me, so I guess they're good.
He didn't shoot you. All right. Well, I guess that's good. All right.
Of course, going back, I'm a bit. I grew up, as I said, in the 70s. Sabbath, Zeppelin, Purple. But as far as the American bands, it was all Nugent and Aerosmith in the 70s. And I think people forget to remember how fucking huge Ted Nugent was back in the late 70s. He was the biggest concert draw in the world. And, the early records he did with Derek St. Holmes, the first album, Free for All, Cat Scratch Fever, and Weekend Warriors. Some of the others afterwards were good as well as a couple of the Amboy Dukes records. I mean, unbelievable, great, fantastic. He was the most extreme guy back in those days, musically speaking. Live show wise, I mean, the dude was awesome. So, he is a bit nutty. I will say that, even though I don't, I don't obviously agree with everything he says, but he's a smart dude. I think most of the stuff he says is to provoke people. I think a lot of the stuff he does is obviously to provoke people. But again, like I said, I feel completely safe with Ted and a fucking arsenal of weapons and guns in his hands. I got no worries about that because he goes out, which I admire and respect. He teaches people how to use firearms properly. He has courses. He does that, and I think that's something that. And I will say this: I think the gun laws are lenient, and that fact that anyone could own a gun, and an unexperienced person with a good record could own a gun. Now, that doesn't mean he knows how to handle or operate a gun. He may have never shot a gun in his life, and you're giving this guy a gun. What Ted does is he goes out and trains people on how to use guns and firearms or bow and arrows or whatever, and to use it respectively. So I've got no problem with Nugent on that end as far as the guns go. But yeah, go ahead, Neely. I'm sorry.
No, I was just curious if you've had any interaction with Uncle Ted.
Nope. Unfortunately, I haven't had the action that Mr. Braverman had with him.